Okay. Hi, Victoria. Would you mind starting off the interview by introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Victoria. I'm originally Russian. I moved to London 9 years ago, I think this year.
Mhm.
So I have 4 degrees in various things. So I did economics and management in Russia, and then I did fashion management postgrad in Russia again. And then in London, I've done another postgrad and then a master's degree in strategic fashion marketing in London College of Fashion, which is part of University of the Arts, London.
Mhm.
At the moment, I'm the distribution executive, I think. I have a very long, unpronounceable position in the company, but I am dealing with worldwide distribution for UGG brand.
Lovely. Can you tell us what you did in your various degrees at university and how that inspired you to go into whatever you did after graduating?
Because I'm coming from a very Eastern kind of family, we have still this perception that in order to be successful in life, you do have to get higher education. I don't think people when they are 17 really know what they want to do. So mine was a safe bet. I did economics management. That's really easy. I thought, well, for sure, by the time I figure out what I want to do, I'm going to have enough education to kind of support my goals in life. I was not the brightest student. I think I was not motivated enough, to be fair. This was not really my area of interest. I was fairly successful in anything to do with psychology or sociology or like oral skills, stuff like that. At the same time, math was not really my forte for sure. But that was quite an interesting experience. My uni was known in Moscow for being horribly tense on students. I think we were 500 people when we started year one, and by
Yeah.
year four, graduating, it was around 130 who actually got a diploma. So a lot of people who dropped out, yeah, during the course of events. And then after a couple of years in the uni, I realized I'm actually quite interested in branding and aspects of marketing. And where else to learn branding than fashion, where ultimately branding is playing such a massive role in how you present and sell the product eventually. So thus I've started slowly moving into fashion, not really knowing what I'm gonna do because Russia and fashion, it's still not a very developed sphere, I would say.
Mhm.
But then I did get an opportunity to go to London and study here in the uni, and it was great. In University of the Arts, it's a completely different structure to what you do in Russia. In Russia, it's more lecture-based, and you're quite supervised during your studies. In London, I found the system is they more teach you how to look for information and how to work with it rather than guide you throughout the way. And this way of learning was much easier for me, to be fair. So it was
Yeah.
quite interesting.
And how do you recommend us as undergraduates figure out what we want to do in our future careers? Because you shifted around a little bit, and maybe people in my position are probably a lot more confused, or very confused, or just as confused as you were. So, what do you recommend we do to figure out what to commit to?
I think there is a mix of things that you really should be doing. First of all, I would look at what kind of inspires you and what gets you going. What is the easiest subject for you, regardless of whether it's actually difficult or not? Which subject are you thriving? And if you even have to read an enormous amount of books on it, it doesn't feel like you're actually working. It's more for joy and you're genuinely interested because it is it is always easier to succeed in something you genuinely like. Another one is talk to people in the industry. So I do get requests sometimes from students who are graduating from my uni to get like a one-to-one session and talk about what it actually likes to work in fashion and what it is indeed. Um, but because it might be something different, experiences vary, and what we think the industry is going to be when we're in uni might be completely different to what it actually is. So talk to someone who is in the industry. Mentorship is another great thing. If you can find a mentor who will inspire you and who's going to teach you how to to do stuff in real world. That's another great way of understanding what you do. And don't be afraid to do something you don't like. Don't be afraid to kind of experiment, because I think those times where you had to stick in one job for 10 years and make a career and all of that, they're long past. They're never coming back. It's all very quick and very fast paced. So try different things, see what sticks.
Lovely, thank you. Can you describe what your career path has looked like since you graduated?
That was a long time ago. So I did sell ice cream at a Magnum pop-up store in a French-made outfit in Covent Garden. So that was experience, which is, I think, was really great, because as an immigrant, I was struggling with, well, first of all, language barrier. You think in a different language. It's difficult to be funny, especially in a foreign language. So actually facing customers day to day for 3 months in a very busy environment of a pop-up was really good to kind of overcome my shyness and like natural tendency to stick to the quiet corner of my Russian life. So that was really good. And then after a while, through networking, actually, I found my first job. Because again, for an immigrant who's not coming from a EU perspective, we do have an issue of visa. So if you're coming from a third world country that is not like on well, actually we have Brexit coming, but don't worry about that. All of us are going to be on the same page now. So you need to stick to finding the company that has permission to hire international students, basically international workers. So there is a list on the government website. So just browse through it, see which companies do look promising and that you want to work for. And that would be one important step. My career, so after a lot of retail on the shop floor experience, I moved on to a tiny itsy bitsy fashion multi-brand company. So I was I started as an intern. I was paid though. I do think that interns have to be paid. Don't go for an unpaid internship for sure. And I started as an intern and moved, I think, in 2.5 years to wholesale manager. But I was basically dealing with young designers who want to be sold across the world, but they don't have the connections to get their foot in the door of major retailers like Selfridges and Harrods. So my boss was very well known in the industry, and she really taught me and she coached me. So that was a great stepping stone in my career. After that, I moved on to something completely different. So one of those floats like that look like a massive flamingo that Kim Kardashian was like drifting in her villa in Miami or something. So the company is called Sunny Life, and they're doing all kinds of inflatable stuff. It was a great environment to work in. I was actually doing ops, so I moved to something completely different, operations. And they are an Australian company, so I get to travel to Australia. I visited Sydney. It was all part of a great experience. And then I moved to a very famous London-based showroom, which is called Rainbow Wave. And I was again dealing with young designers, and I was the manager of the Russian-speaking country, so ex-USSR. After that, I moved to UGG, and I'm happily here.
Mm-hmm. Do you think traveling so much has helped you with your career and like life in general?
I do think it depends. If you're a person who wants to travel, for sure you can find, but then again, you should probably find a job that suits your needs,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in sales right now and it is extensive travel for sure. But at the same time, you can be in the industry, and if you don't like traveling, you can be in operations or sales support, which are people who are really, really important in the company, but they just don't need to travel so much. So I wouldn't put primary importance onto travel, to be fair, in career progression.
Okay. And also, could you tell us what actually working in the fashion industry is like, and maybe specifically in the field that you're in?
It's quite different. So fashion is known to be, how can I say, a very character built building industry. So it
Yeah.
can be, to put it plain, it can be toxic at times for sure, because usually people who work in fashion really want to be there. They're super talented, they're very creative, but it's not exactly a very corporate, I would say, field where people would employ different rules and corporational, organizational kind of spirit and stuff like that. So I was in a couple of companies previously where relationship between you and your coworkers can become toxic just because this is the field, basically. Again, it depends if you want to explore that. If you're fine with that, it's absolutely fine. Everybody can choose whatever they like. It's definitely not for me, so I moved on to more of a corporate side of business because Deckers is a massive American corporation, so they're looking after a couple of brands. And for me, it was important that I'm going to work with a smile on my face every day. And then I can completely trust that my colleagues are at all times respectful, and we can make actually friends. So it was great. But working in fashion is a lot less glamorous, I would say, than people think, because we do get to go, for example, on fashion weeks. And my boyfriend actually snuck around one time. He went with me to Paris for 10 days. I think he's seen me like 30 minutes a day probably during the 10 days, because you are on the job nonstop. So 8 a.m. we start in the showroom because buyers like to come in early and start their day early. And then we're probably there until 6, 7. And then we start training the interns to kind of explain to them what's going to happen tomorrow. And then we have a calendar run where we need to discuss, because it's around 100 buyers a day in the showroom. So we need to basically look at who's going to be coming tomorrow, what potentially they can look at, and what would they be interested in. And then you need to grab lunch. So our hotel was always in Paris next to McDonald's, and this was my most glamorous dinner every bloody day there. Yeah, but then my pictures on Instagram look amazing. I'm like in Paris and I'm hanging out. But in the last 4 fashion weeks, I've never gotten to see the Eiffel Tower ever. I just didn't have the time.
Okay, so what do you currently do in more detail?
I'm currently a distribution sales executive, I think my position is. So as a UGG brand, we do trade directly in the market. So for example, if you go to Germany, all of the UGG stores and UGG in retailers like big KaDeWe, let's say, department stores, it's all our own sales team, and they're working on the ground, and the stores actually belong to us. There are other countries where we either don't have the knowledge or we just don't want to go into the country direct. So we're working with a distributor who's going to be a third party, and we're going to be working together to expand into the market. So I'm the one looking after distributors. I'm looking after 30 countries at the moment with 12 different companies. So some of them are joined, like the Middle East, and there are masses of countries there. My job, although I'm part of the sales team, I'm not actually doing a hard sell, because most of the distributors have been in the business longer than I have been. So they do know the product, they know their businesses very well. My job is more relationship building, guiding them through the process, resolving any issues, and then we're coming up together with a strategy of how to develop a brand in any particular country. And I am helping them realize that with our own resource. So it's more of a partnership.
Lovely. So say that like I'm someone that hasn't had a background in fashion. How does someone like me get their foot in the door in the fashion industry and an internship and things like that?
Companies, especially in fashion, I would say, depending on what position you're going for, like what function you're looking for. In sales, I do think that the multi-brand showroom is a really good place to kind of really dive deep into what fashion is all about, understand the seasonality, understand how the production works. So all of that is really coming from a wholesale showroom, because you get to work with a lot of small brands. And because it's usually a very small team as well in each brand, you kind of get to understand how everything works, all the function. So I would, and they're always looking for interns, especially during fashion week. So if it's a fashion week and we're not in coronavirus situation, definitely just email direct to anybody in, I think there are 4 or 5 really big showrooms in London, and they're most probably they're going to reply. So, but it is a seasonal job. So in wholesale, if you're talking about like small designers and fashion weeks, it's 6 times a year when we're super busy, and the rest is not that interesting. So that's one thing. If you're looking more for like a corporate job, I would say we do have apprenticeship programs, so you can start this way. Another way of doing that would be through a retail store. So we do have our own retail stores, and we do have a lot of people moving around and actually working in the head office after they've had some experience. So I do believe that a bright person who's really enjoying his work is going to be noticed, and companies are always on a hunt for someone who is bright and who is a performer.
Lovely. So, how do you feel like networking has helped you in your career advancements?
I do feel that I've neglected networking for quite a long time. So I wasn't the most networking person in the uni, which was a mistake, I have to say, because a lot of my classmates actually stuck together after graduation. And I can see them on LinkedIn moving together through different roles and kind of pulling each other up to the same level, which is great. Going forward, I am networking now extensively, but that's more to understand different perspective, different business models to kind of get inspiration for your own work. But in terms of if you are in a position of looking for a job, networking is key, because you never, also don't be afraid to ask for help. Anyone on LinkedIn who you know is more than happy to help, because it's actually a very small thing that makes a person really feel good about themselves, first of all. So it's not something major. And do network any time you get, like go on keynote speakers and see who's talking about what, and just if you're somewhat interested, go and check it out, because people do get separated in a big city like London. Even people who were in the uni together or worked together previously, it's very difficult to keep in touch. So we need to do something extra to try and change that.
Yeah. Um, what did I say? So we don't, like me as an undergraduate doesn't have a lot of experience networking. So what are your tips and tricks to make it feel a lot more organic than what it actually is?
Oh, it's a tough one.
Mm.
It's I think everybody needs to find something that works for them. My thing would be a compliment. So I'm always opening with a compliment. I find something that I like about a person, I'm just going to go and say, "Oh, I really love your earrings," or something like that. So talk about something you are comfortable with. People sense when you're tense, and they sense when you're uncomfortable in what's happening. So just kind of talk about what you know and what makes you gonna interested. Compliment is one thing. Another thing is you can organically join in the conversation. I still don't know how to do that. I've tried multiple times, but I've seen people do that successfully. It's when like a group of people is talking about something already, and you just kind of slide in there and you start talking about that like you've been there the whole time. It never works with me yet. But there's no such, like, it is awkward, but it's awkward for everybody there. Like, you're a group of people who don't know each other and you're supposed to talk about stuff. Everybody feels the same. Honestly, they're going to feel relieved if you come up with a topic and they finally have something to talk about. So don't worry about that.
Lovely. What has your experiences been like, maybe climbing the ladder, work related, and have you found it quite difficult, and why?
It's a good question. So climbing, I'm a perfectionist and I'm a high performer. So that really drives me. On the negative side, I'm not very patient. So I do believe in brutal honesty, and I'm always clear in expressing my expectation to my team and my boss of where I want to be. There are different types of bosses. Some of them don't really feel comfortable talking to you about a career perspective. And I find it difficult to communicate with those types of leaders, because I think we're all in the business of, first of all, making money, but also making something out of our own lives and careers. So we should be comfortable talking about that. But it just, sorry, I'm just trying to remember how many times did I ask for a promotion? I think around 3 or 4. I blatantly came out and I said, "Excuse me, these are my KPIs," but I'm very structured. So I'm like, this is what I've done, this is what I've achieved, and this is how much money I've made for the company. So do be prepared when you want to talk about that, because they are going to throw numbers at you for sure. And then you just go in a conversation and say, "Listen, I just want to talk to you. I am planning to be here in 2 years' time. I'm prepared to do this and this. I want to understand that we're on the same page and you feel the same. Usually it goes quite well. I had once when I could see that my boss was super uncomfortable and she was startled. And I just said, okay, do you think about this and we can come back to that conversation. We never did because she just couldn't overcome the uncomfortableness of the situation. But I did not work there for long, I have to say. Like after a year, I think I left because there was no career growth for me, and I could see that from how it's happening. I do have a friend who's been in the company for 10 years, and she's not looking for growth. Like she's very comfortable where she is. And her bosses are constantly talking to her about, would you like to progress? Would you like to take on extra responsibility? But it's not for everybody. If you feel completely perfectly comfortable in where you are, you should definitely stick to something that makes you happy. But if you are driven and if you want to build a career, it's going to be tough. You need to have clear KPIs. You have to discuss it with your boss beforehand. You need to know how you're going to be judged, what kind of characteristics are going to be put under your name, and where they want you to be. So you just go and say, tell me what areas of expertise do you think I'm lacking and how can I make up for that? For example, now next week, I'm starting a negotiation course because I do tend to be quite straightforward and pushy sometimes during negotiation. So my boss feels like I need to polish that. So yeah, just be open to feedback. Don't take it personally. Adjust what you can and then come out and ask for what you think you deserve. And then you find middle ground.
Lovely. I know this answer is going to be a bit different from what I usually get, because fashion is so female heavy, right? But like, what is it like to work as a female in the industry and firm that you do?
I wouldn't say that fashion is female heavy, to be fair.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. We do have a lot of guys. Um, I'm actually in my team right now. So I'm a regional sales team. We're 12 people, and I think 6 of them or 7 even are guys. So I think maybe traditionally in a non-head office environment, I would say. So if you go on the shop floor, probably you're going to see more girls working the shop floor than the guys, probably. But actually, I need to read on that. This is a very interesting point to kind of understand. But being a girl in any business is sometimes difficult for sure. We do have our own struggles. But again, this all comes back to toxic, and it comes back to bullying, and those environments that are unhealthy in some way tend to make problems for females as well. So you can't discriminate against one, let's say a woman, a gender, and be absolutely perfect in something else. So do look for someone who has some corporate values that are the same as yours, and you're going to be very happy. As being a woman, I would say fashion is probably one of the easiest to be in because again, it's a traditionally more female friendly environment. Uh, but yeah, this is it. I have never faced. I'll rephrase that. I personally never faced any discrimination based on the fact that I'm a girl. Never.
I mean, that's great. That's a really, really great answer, anyways. Um, so one of my final questions would be, if you were hiring someone entry level right now for your field or your team, what kind of things would you be looking for in a candidate?
We're probably always looking for a reflection of ourselves, or what we think would be a reflection of ourselves. I do think I hate micromanaging. I don't like to be micromanaged, and I don't like micromanaging anyone else. So I would look for someone who's a self-starter, who's coming to me with a solution rather than a problem. But that, again, to the extent of the knowledge and expertise. I'm not asking anyone to solve any massive puzzles or anything. And I would like someone who's very patient, and I'm kind of trying to do the same towards the person. And I do want someone who's super keen to learn. this is, if you're hungry on the job, like anything you don't know, we can teach you. That's not an issue. No one's coming with a complete set of skills that's going to be perfect for that position. Definitely not. But you should be eager to learn, and you should have a really good work ethic. So we work together as a team. We're very close in our work relationships with my team, for example, right now. And you should just fit in this group for sure.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much.
Great.
We're going to the end of our interview, so I wanted to ask you if you have any more tips and tricks for people that are nearly graduating on how they should enter your industry in general, or what they should be thinking about right now.
Well, people graduating in 2020, good luck to you guys, because Corona is a pain, honestly. But at the same time, at the moment, a lot of companies are becoming less strict. So a lot of companies are going on to work from home, and a lot of companies are becoming flexible in how they work. And it's all new. And at the same time, after a recession, there's always going to be an uplift. So don't lose hope, because I think now it's super tough. But companies are going to grow aggressively after all this. They are going to hire, and just stick to what you like, and it's going to be all perfect for sure.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I'll
Yeah, no
stop the
worries.
recording now.